Hello everyone. So we are continuing with the introductory session on journalism. So in the initial video, we saw what actually journalism means, or what are the activities which are involved in journalism. But there are different kinds of processes that a journalist might undergo. Even writers who contribute other kinds of genres other than objective news also are termed under this umbrella category of journalism at times. For example, there are features and article and opinion pieces. These are technically not objective pieces of news or information, but rather the personal opinions of the writers who produce this content would definitely be in these pieces. So in that scenario, distinguishing between what can be called journalistic writing and creative writing becomes very significant. So what actually constitutes journalistic writing? So you just need to look at the very first definition that we had. So that is gathering, assessing, and presenting information for the use of the general public was the function that we learned that a journalist does. So you can categorize the first, the kind of contents that are produced in print media according to that. So first of all, there is information-based or news-based content, and also there are creative writings or opinion pieces which come in print media. But somehow we associate the word journalism with both these concepts, but identifying the differences between the two is very significant. The first category is obviously about objectivity, and it's about reporting facts or reporting events as they are, rather than giving their personal opinions or reflections about those. So the front page news reports or news stories are a part of this kind of a genre. But you also see other kinds of writing in magazines or even in newspapers itself, in supplementary sections and all. So we have to think about how do we distinguish between the two. So for somebody who is hunting for content for news, what are the primary things that that person will look at? So these are called the 5 W's and 1 H. So for a journalist who's looking for factual information, they are, to simplify things, we can say that they're looking for the 5 W's and 1 H, which are the question words. And what, who, when, where, why, and how. What, who, when, where, why, and how. So these are the 5 W's and 1 H which they try to answer, or to make it a comprehensive piece of news. So imagine that an event happened and a reporter is to report that. They look for these kinds of information. What happened? Who were involved? What was the incident that happened? Who are the people who were involved in that event? And when did it happen? And where did it happen, and why did it happen, and eventually how did it happen? When you compile all these information itself, almost a comprehensive overview of that event is produced. So these are called the 5 W's and 1 H when it comes to journalistic writing. And as much as the journalist can, they try not to intervene in the news with their own prejudices. But as I said in the first video itself, there are instances presently where this kind of an objectivity or commitment towards reporting facts is somehow being intruded by the tendency to bring in personal prejudices in. The boundary between facts and interpreted news is actually blurring. Even the media these days is actually, if you look at a news piece or a discussion happening in a news, we can see that imagine that it's a group discussion. We can see that the news reporters these days actually take up put the position of some argument, actually, which was not the case earlier. They used to act as moderators rather than taking some particular part. But nowadays there have been very clear instances of where the news reporters actually become or stick to one particular view rather than being a moderator in the discussion. So this boundary between facts and interpreted news is actually being blurred, which is slightly scary, but probably let's hope that things would work out in a better way. So this is about news writing, but on the other side there is definitely creative writing. In creative writing, you have the freedom of imagination, which you do not have when it comes to, imagine that there is a bit of information which is not available while writing a news story. The news reporter cannot imagine that and assume that this is what could have happened, or imagine that there are hints that this is how it would have happened. That the reporter might have a feeling that this is how it would have happened. Even then, that reporter or a journalist cannot write about that unless there are verifiable, concrete evidences. So the journalist always has to stick with concrete evidences, while the creative writer can stick to his imagination and the creative world he is creating through his or her imagination. So that is very clear. And then a peculiarity of journalistic writing would be that it will be structured in a particular manner, while creative writing does not have to be that way. It will be structured so that the information is precisely revealed. The same kind of information is chunked together, but it does not have to be the same in the case of creative writing. The writer has the freedom to make it as interesting, and the mode of writing can also keep varying. Imagine that they want to write begin from the end and go to the beginning, even they can do that. But for a news writer, there is a particular kind of structure which would be there for that print media form, so they would have to stick on to that. Now coming to creative writing, again, it is a very broad canvas. You can write about personal experiences, you can write about even social events happening around, or social problems that are happening around. One can actually reflect on it and report their personal understanding of that issue or personal take on those issues. All that is possible in the case of creative writing, while one has to stick to objectivity and evidences, clear evidences, in the case of journalistic writing. So then in the case of creative writing, there is of course the freedom in the length of the story, or even the way in which an issue can be addressed, and there is no need to go for evidences or fact checks in the case of creative writing. But in the case of opinion opinion pieces, of course, imagine that somebody is commenting on a socially significant event or a social issue. Even then, if you are giving an opinion, then your opinion would definitely have to be backed up with evidences or supporting arguments. So that is definitely there, but the canvas of creative writing is actually broader. So what I want you to do is, these are just some ways in which I could identify the differences between creative writing and journalistic writing. You can think of more actually. You sit down and take a piece of paper, draw two columns and start writing about what could be the differences between journalistic writing and creative writing. You can use the cues that I suggested, but there could be more and more that could come out of you. And once you have done that, take a picture of that and post it in the comments below this video in the Google Classroom, or if I hope that is possible. Otherwise, you can post it in the stream also. So with that, I'll conclude for today. Thank you for listening, guys. Take care.